If you've been following my journey for a while now, then you know that I started with the Canon M50. Then, a couple years later, I bought the R5C. The R5C is a beast of a camera, and it leveled up the quality of my photos and my videos so much so that it gave me the confidence to start a photography/videography business. However, lately, I've been craving a smaller camera for everyday use. As my brother would say, you don't buy a Ferrari to drive it every day. So, this week I'm renting a Ferrari, just kidding, no. This week I'm renting a Canon R8. While the R5C has felt a little too big lately and the Canon M50 has felt a bit too small, I'm hoping that this camera feels just right. So let's see if this is my Goldilocks camera. Okay, I just wanted to film my first reaction to opening this because it just came via UPS and I'm curious as to how the size is compared to my R5C. So I think the main reason why I'm looking at the Canon R5 is the size. If it was a big camera and did everything that it did, I wouldn't get it. Let's see. Oh, well, that was anticlimactic because it has a case in the case. My goodness, it's tiny. Wow. It feels so little. I'm considering buying it after I've rented it. The size is wild in comparison to my R5C. Like I said, the size would be the main reason why I would want to get the R8. It's just so little and compact, yet it's a full frame mirrorless camera. So it is powerful, but tiny. So that's the main reason why I'm intrigued. And that's why I'm making this video. So you might be wondering at this moment how much smaller the Canon M50 is compared to the Canon R8. And honestly, the Canon M50 is way smaller. However, it has a lot of limitations that will come up throughout this video. The first one being that it can't shoot in C-Log. So the R5C and Canon R8 can both shoot C-Log, whereas the Canon M50 only has this neutral setting. I will say though, the C-Log footage for the Canon R8 is still way more saturated than the C-Log footage for the Canon R5C, which I'm not too happy about considering I was hoping that getting the R8 that shoots in C-Log would make color grading both sets of footage easier. However, I will say I do like the Canon R8's C-Log footage more than the Canon M50's neutral footage. Something else I was excited about for the Canon R8 is that it can shoot 4K at 60 frames per second, which means that I can slow down footage to 40% on a 24 frame per second sequence. Something a little disappointing is that I have to shoot 4K at 3840 and I can't shoot it at 4096 with the R8, which I usually like to shoot at just because it gives a wider screen without an anamorphic lens, but it'll have to do. Speaking of lenses, the Canon R8 is an RF mount, so I can use all the lenses that I've been using for my R5C, which is great for my wallet. Another use case that I wanted to test out with this R8 is vlogging. All right, so right now I have the R5C on my cool little vlogging tripod. This thing's actually really cool because it like pops out and becomes a tripod that can sit anywhere you want it to. Forgive me if I'm shouting, but it is very windy and I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to use this audio because of how freaking windy it is. It's kind of funny though, because I'm here at the lake and I have the Canon R8 right there recording me with the Canon R5C, and then I have the Canon M50 back there recording the R8 recording me, so it's like a behind the scenes of the behind the scenes. Yeah, honestly, my arm is already starting to get tired holding my Canon R5C like this, so maybe I just need to work out more, or maybe I should try the R8 and see if there's a difference. So let's go for it. So now I have my Canon R8 on here, or the Canon R8, and it has a 16mm lens. By the way, the R5C had the same exact lens. Now the R5C is hanging out where the Canon R8 was hanging out, and also taking a video like it was with the 35mm on. So this is a setup. Honestly, it does feel way lighter. My arm still feels a little bit tired though. I think that's more a reflection on myself. Maybe I haven't been hitting up the gym as much as I need to. But yeah, let's see. I guess I can work with this. It does look a little bit darker on screen. The Canon R5C was set at an f-stop of 8 and ISO 160. That is the same settings for this right now, although for the Canon R5C, they have it at a shutter angle setting, so it automatically adjusts the shutter speed based on the frame rate, whereas this I have to manually adjust the shutter speed. So right now the shutter speed is at 50, and I don't know, it looks a little bit darker to me even though the settings were the same. I don't know if I'm tripping out though, but we'll see when I have them side by side or back and forth. Yeah, when I'm facing the sun it looks good. And this is me fully extended. Oh my goodness, my arm is freaking killing me. Okay, well, and now for good measure, this is the Canon M50. It's shooting 4K, so the autofocus is freaking horrible. And I also have a 16mm lens on it. And this is me with my arm fully extended. So this is one of the reasons why I'm kind of looking at getting the R8, because even though I have my M50, which shoots great at 1080p, I like shooting 4K. I know people say, oh, people stream at 1080p anyways. Yeah, that's true, but I think the trend is for higher resolution as things keep developing, and I just don't want my videos to one day become irrelevant because they're 1080p. Kind of like the 720 videos that we see nowadays, or even the lower resolution that I can't think off my head right now, but you know what I mean. I feel like one day 1080p won't be glorious and we'll have the status quo be 4K or 8K or something crazy. But yeah, this autofocus is horrible. Oh my god, it's painful. Another cool feature that kind of drew me in for the R8 is the fact that it has an interval timer setting. So my Canon R5C has this, but my M50 doesn't. And as someone who takes a lot of self-portraits, having that interval timer makes a world of a difference. For those of you who don't know, it's essentially a setting that you can make your camera take X amount of photos at whatever interval you would like. Personally, I like to take about 50 photos at 2-second intervals when I'm doing self-portraits. Sometimes I even set it to unlimited photos so I could just keep on going and I can pose as much as I want and not have to think about pressing any button and throwing my phone out of the frame, which is what I used to do with my Canon M50. So it's really cool that that is a feature that I have, and it's also cool because now I'm able to use that feature while taking pictures with my Canon R5C. I don't know, a photographer needs photos of themselves with their camera sometimes, you know? So yeah, this was a huge plus. Something else I wanted to test out was battery life. My Canon R5C has a pretty bad battery life unless I have it rigged up in a cage with a V-mount battery, which I think is kind of how it's meant to be used. And that's awesome for shoots where I want to be all rigged up, but if I'm just going out and shooting and vlogging, it doesn't make sense for me to make my chunky camera even chunkier. So I wanted to see how the Canon R8 stood up to the Canon R5C in terms of battery life with just an internal battery being stuck in. So these are the numbers I got. I only tested 4K since that's all I really care about, and you'll notice that the Canon R5C is on there twice because I have two different battery types. It was actually shocking to see the first time I tested, the R5C only did 20 minutes at 24 frames per second, so I gave it another chance and that increased the time to 1 hour and 5 minutes, but still, the Canon R8 beat it out at 1 hour, 8 minutes, and 20 seconds. When it comes to 4K at 60 frames per second, the Canon M50 was not able to participate,
and the Canon R5C with both batteries and the R8 had very similar times. However, the Canon R5C with the LP E6P battery beat it at 37 minutes and 11 seconds. I will say that the Canon R8 overheated at 24 minutes and 30 seconds, shooting 4K 60 frames per second. However, when I'm shooting a clip with the intention of slowing it down, it's usually not a 20-minute clip that I'm shooting at 60 frames per second, more like a 20-second clip, so the overheating doesn't really bother me. Overall, the battery life of the R8 isn't super impressive, and unfortunately, Canon is currently out of stock for the batteries that the R8 takes. So if I were to get a backup, I don't know where I would get the backup from.
So now we are at the end of this video, and I would like to let you know what my final decision is for this camera. As I said, I rented it with the intention of potentially purchasing it, and I did so through Lens Rental. I was able to use some of my points from Lens Rental, so I was able to rent this for $25 for a week, which is incredible. And Lens Rental has a keeper option, which means that I could buy this exact camera and just keep it and not send it back. So before I tell you my decision, I'm gonna pop up on screen some pros and cons that I came up with after making this video. So ultimately, I ended up purchasing this camera. And if you follow me on Instagram, then you already know that. I felt sad at the idea of having to send it back. And what's cool is that the points that I applied to get it rented also are being applied to the purchase. So ultimately, I get a slight discount compared to other places when buying this camera used. And when I was out at the lake testing out the vlogging style, and I saw how crappy the M50 was doing with the 4K crop factor, and the autofocus being all out of whack, I think that kind of solidified it for me. So now I have this as my B camera, and my M50 has been demoted to a C camera, maybe even a D camera, because my iPhone kind of does better with 4K footage than my M50. My poor little sweet M50. But yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And until next time, bye.